Previously on Vaush.
That doesn't mean every individual who's in a country that was colonized by a person of their race makes them a colonizer. Those aren't the same things. You're essentializing to race and justifying state crimes.
They are still colonizers, Vaush. They're still colonizers. South Africa is still colonized.
I'm just saying he fights back against white supremacy. Like, he fights back against systemic racism, you know, policing, black neighborhoods being underfunded. He's pro raising taxes so we can redistribute money towards these groups. I think that would make him not a white supremacist.
Not if you're saying the shit he's still saying. It's useless. He's
Gotcha.
a useless. If he considers himself an ally by saying this shit he says, then he's useless.
I have a huge issue with the fact that, for example, that we're calling guys like Vaush a white supremacist. I fought white supremacists. I've been attacked by the KKK. Our protests have been attacked by the KKK. That guy literally stands with us.
Great convo between DrHeemedOut and Mac Aston. Oh, I think hold on.
Attacked by the KKK. Our protests have been attacked by the KKK. I've been attacked by the police. I know white supremacy. That guy's not a white supremacist. That guy literally stands with us. Like, I don't know how you can ever come to the conclusion, oh wait, I know why you came to that conclusion, and this is what happens in the movement all the time. He disagreed with you. I have a huge...
Nice. He's talking about you and that? Yeah, I think I'm the one being referred to here. Nice. Oh, you know, I actually wanted to do this, and people in chat are posting about it anyway. This is the Professor Flowers retrospective, because I feel like we learned a lot, you know, as a channel. Funny rhetorician in chat says, I don't know if you saw, but Professor Flowers created a separate Facebook account and has been posting one post regarding your debate with her, and she's begging people to be nice to her in leftist Facebook groups she know will be sympathetic to her Lamau. I can't verify whether or not that's true, but I choose to believe that it's true, and really, is that not all that matters? I actually want to, I thought we could do a retrospective on that a little bit, because I think it's actually really interesting to look at in hindsight. So for those of you who don't know, and I don't know how you couldn't know given how much discourse it produced, the Professor Flowers debate was spurned because there was a smaller YouTuber by the name of Professor Flowers. I hope you're keeping up so far. This is good stuff. She made a video criticizing me, which I went over on stream, and then she made another video also criticizing me. And then I asked, like, hey, do you want to come on? And eventually she came on. We had a discussion, and it wasn't great. It wasn't great for a couple of reasons, you know? Not the least of which was the fallout afterwards. So the main the crux of this discussion was about decolonialism and black nationalism. So I'm going to give my understandings of these terms as best as I can. As far as I can tell, there's always some variety as to how these are defined, but I think this is pretty much the definition, right? So black nationalism isn't like the white version, or sorry, it's not the black version of white nationalism. It's not like black nationalism means you want like ethno-states and racial superiority. It means, in the context of like broader academic terminology, basically an attempt to assert a sort of direct autonomous power within an existing nation. So you guys remember Black Wall Street? That would be an example. Because in that neighborhood, before whites burnt it all down, they made an effort to keep their money in community. They would shop at black businesses and such, you know, try to keep it in, because if they, you know, no matter how much money they had, if they shopped outside, bought outside, that money would eventually be siphoned off to sort of the the broader hegemonic white supremacist economic system. So by trying to assert an autonomy within that system, they gained power, which was taken from them when their city got burnt down. So, you know, the lesson from that is Whitey's mad, I guess. So that's fine. Black separatism is essentially just the black version of white nationalism. It's just kind of couched in this, like, a different type of victim rhetoric. Because, of course, white nationalists believe themselves to be the victims, don't they? They think their communities are being run over by immigrants or whatever. So black separatists, for them, it's framed in the context of decolonization, or in, like, reasserting or reassessing their, like, traditional African identity. The end result tends to lead to ethnic supremacy and ethno-states, and I think that's bad no matter what. So, not good. So that's my understanding of like the black nationalism versus black separatism thing. With regards to decolonization and land back, these are things that I'm super duper in favor of, you know? Land back, as I understand it, in the context of the United States, is a movement which attempts to assert a greater degree of tribal control over land offered to them, and also to hold the United States accountable to broken contracts with regards to native land and the boundaries and borders pertaining to it. It's really complicated, but basically it's like, hey, America, you kind of cheated us here like 47 times, you know? Come on, guys. Let's not. Which seems totally fair to me. You know, I'm a big old fan of the government being held accountable to broken contracts. It seems to me like a fairly agreeable thing. This is going to vary, you know, from country to country, because every indigenous population has its own history with oppression, but I'm generally in favor of this stuff. So anyway, those are like my understandings of the issues at hand here. My conversation with Professor Flowers was a little weird. You can watch it yourself if you want. The people have accosted me for this, but I stand by it. It was weird in that she claimed not to be a black separatist, which is not a thing that I like, but then defended black separatism when other people did it. So she wouldn't say ethno-states are good. She would say that colonized people have the right to do what they wanted to determine whether they wanted to live with their colonizers. And by colonizers, she meant white people. So when you give a state almost unlimited moral autonomy in deciding what to do with a racial group, well, I'm sure you can understand why I was uncomfortable with this. In future conversations that she's had with like DrHeemedOut, who's a cool guy on Twitch, she actually explicitly said that her definition of colonizer meant white people. So the whole wide history of colonization across the millennia in all the continents of the world, that to her it's exclusively like white people colonize her. Like that's that, you know. The thing to me that makes this really, really dangerous is that when you do the whole colonizer equals white people equals colonizer thing, what you're doing is essentialization, which is a common tactic for dehumanization, and you're doing this in the context of legitimizing state power. So when all white people are colonizers, what a colonizer is a person acting aggressively against your group, right? It essentially means any violence against white people in that context is an act of self-defense. That can get really, really, really dangerous. Now, thankfully, real land-back activists and real decolonization activists and real anti-racist activists, they don't believe any of this. They don't advocate for black ethno-states or like white people as some kind of like existentially, villainous racial group. But Professor Flowers isn't a real advocate for these issues, because as far as I could tell, she has a really bad understanding of them. So the frustration I had in this conversation was that try as I might, try as I may, I couldn't actually like get her to realize that she was essentially just, I mean, this is like the stereotype, like basically advocating for like what people call reverse racism, right? I don't actually think there's a such thing, but it seemed like from her perspective, she was just legitimizing any kind of antagonism you could direct against white people, sort of as a reflection of, I guess, historical wrongs or prejudices. And it's also weird because like, aren't non-white people in America just as much sort of beneficiaries of American colonialism as white people? I mean, like, if you're in America and you're like Hispanic or whatever, or Asian, you're in America, you benefit from American economic systems. Well, as much, but not as much, but more so for sure. Don't conflate colonialism with white supremacy. They're not the same thing. No matter your race, if you're an American, you're part of the national group that colonized this country, and you've benefited from all of the shit that we did as a product of it. White supremacy may have influenced the way those resources were distributed, but fundamentally, the act of colonization and the benefits that you reap from it, this would be like saying people of color here in the United States don't benefit from exploitative labor practices abroad, just because it's only actually being actively done by like the capitalist class. I personally have never like forced Chinese laborers to assemble iPhones, but I would be joking, I'd be kidding myself if I pretended that the prices that I pay when I go shopping are not influenced by the effect that my nation's hegemonic power economically has in the world. This stuff is really complicated. The last thing you want to do when it comes to situations like this is essentialize. The dynamic of white people equals colonizer equals white people is it's not just like inaccurate or reductive, it's like outright wrong, and it obfuscates a lot of real like meaningful issues there. But it's involuntary for the consumer in America, so what's your point? Are you voluntarily colonizing native territory right now? That's also involuntary. You realize that, right? If you're born in America right now, whether no matter what your race is, you're not like voluntarily participating in colonization. The active process of colonization within our own borders ended a while ago. Now it's just the passive reinforcement of existing power structures, which you not only do you not have any direct control over it, you probably don't even know what they are. I say I don't know what they all are. It's based on centuries and centuries of broken deals, contracts, really complicated systemic and interpersonal systems. These issues are just too complicated to approach with a whole this race is this thing and this race is the other thing attitude. One way or another, the conversation lasted forever, over 3 hours, and I don't know. She's just really about the racial essentialization. So I wouldn't be talking about this if it weren't for that. Sorry, if it were just that. What really surprised me was the reaction from the rest of the online left, because the rest of the online left, I'm being general here, not every single online leftist, but a lot of people in the online left, not in my community, saw this discussion and actually sided with her. They thought that I was being some like sea lioning, anti decolonization, white supremacist, etc., which is really, really strange to me, you know, because I actually get accused of misunderstanding theory really, really often. But in this case, as far as I can tell from all the research that I've done now and before, I was right, like objectively, when it came to a lot of the definitions concerning decolonization. And she was not just wrong, but harmfully wrong. Wrong in a way that actually enables really bad politics. Racial essentialization should never be a part of leftist doctrine. Sometimes we slip into it a little bit when we talk about white people not liking not liking spicy food, or they like mayonnaise or whatever. Like, okay, I make jokes too. But if you're making a serious argument for decolonization, like real advocacy, there's no room for that type of behavior, none whatsoever. So I was really disappointed to see that a lot of people on the left reflexively sided with her. I'm going to take a guess and say like 98% of the people who reflexively sided with her didn't actually see the debate. Is that fair of me to guess? I'm guessing that it had a lot to do with signifiers they picked up on without actually seeing the content, a lot of which was probably a pre-existing dislike of me, which explains a lot of hate that I get. Let's be fair, a lot of it having to do with her race and mine. That's also a pretty big factor. In the left, when there is an argument on race issues between a white and a black person, people on the left tend to, by default, side with the black person or the non-white person. Because if we look at it as a matter of statistics, white people do tend to be more reactionary when it comes to race issues. So when you're looking at social patterns from above, from a bird's eye view, I get that. But when you're looking at an interpersonal interaction, I really think you should set that stuff aside, those generalizations, and you should really try to focus on the actual arguments being made. Because to do otherwise is to engage in the worst form of identity politics, where you leave aside truth values and instead just assign people an oppression Olympics point score, and whoever has the highest one gets the default charitability in the context of any argument. I noticed there was a pretty big difference between the way Professor Flowers talked with me and the way Professor Flowers talked with Dr. Heemed. Dr. Heemed is... I'm actually going to be...
right.
Sorry. Totally real with you. I have no idea what Dr. Heem's race or ethnicity is. Dr. Heemed doesn't seem to be white, as far as I can tell. That's the... Here, can I forgot that I was playing Mario during this. Can we just get a photo of Dr. Heemed up? A very low res photo. There we go. That's Heemed. A Persian? Oh, I grew up around Persians. Some of the best food in the world. I have fond memories of my downstairs neighbor when I was a little kid, occasionally cooking chicken and rice and making too much and bringing some up to me. Really, really amazing stuff. Heemed is a really good cook. I saw the Twitter drama today about him saying that olive oil isn't good for cooking with. Look, okay. Tangential issues aside, Professor Flowers had a conversation with Heemed. Now, Heemed is to my right. Heemed isn't as left-leaning as me. He's like a left-leaning liberal or social democrat, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but he's on the left while maybe not being a leftist. So his issues and his perspective wasn't the same as mine. But in a general sense, he seems to also be against racial essentialization, which, God, I can't believe I have to make an argument against racial essentialization on the left, you know? Like, fellow leftists, apparently we need to have this conversation. He had a conversation with her in which not only did she admit that literally just thought like colonizer meant white people, essentially, she also, in spite of him being like really, really nice to her the whole time, kind of abruptly left. You've seen the discussion, right, guys? Do you think that's a fair characterization? It seemed like the conversation was progressing. I mean, he never insulted her. He was just asking questions, and she just got mad at the end and left. And even afterwards begged him to take the video down, which was really interesting because he didn't do much of anything. But I think I've pieced together a bit of a narrative after all of this. Yeah, apparently she made a final video after this. Now, you're not going to be able to get a feel for this unless you watch like all the content involved, but my impression of Professor Flowers is that with no respect, I think that she's unironically racist and very bad faith, and is either uneducated and arrogant or just not that bright when it comes to these issues. Because her definitions were wrong, they were harmful, and it seemed like the most consistent narrative behind a lot of her politics was not liking white people that much. I'm not going to pretend that makes me like a huge victim or whatever. We know who systemic power, we know where the systemic power lies. Vaush, she's not racist, just dumb. Gotta say, this is kind of a dumb argument, but if you reverse the races, a lot of the behavior she engaged in, yeah, the essentialization stuff is just really, really strange to me, I think that people on the left should be more willing to call out. I've said this before, but we should be more willing to call out what people have traditionally called, and I hate the term, but I'm using it, reverse bigotry. So an example of this that I've brought up before is with TERFs. So TERFs, trans-exclusionary radical feminists, have been around for a while, not like hundreds of years, but, a little while. But they only really entered common discourse on the left in the past couple of years. Do you know why that is? It's because their warning signs weren't tracked and picked up on up until recently. Because a lot of women who are currently TERFs are what people would call man-hating feminists 5 or 6 years ago. TERFs tend to really dislike men, or at the very least fear them tremendously. That's one of the reasons why they're so transphobic against trans women and so dismissive of trans men, because they think of trans men as lost or confused, but trans women are like secret men in hiding who are trying to victimize them under like the veil of perceived femininity. That's a really common TERF argument, That's why they call them predators, basically. So fundamentally, TERFs, their transphobia is rooted in a lot of stuff, but one of the biggest ones, is unironically man-hating. You guys recognize that, right? Like, that is that's like the common narrative there. And that man-hating tendency within feminism has always reared its head from time to time. Oftentimes it's satirical, and oftentimes it's funny. Sometimes a small portion of the online left feminist community is unironically misandristic, yeah. And when they are, usually people on the left don't really like pay attention to it or care, but I think these people do real harm. For one, antagonism towards a majority power-holding group is just personally harmful. Bigotry hurts you. Being bigoted causes you to see the world in a spiteful, vindictive, and antagonistic way. For two, it's bad theory. a good feminist should understand that the issues we have in our society aren't rooted in some kind of biological problem with male sexed people, but rather in social conditions. Because the latter we can change. You can't change the former. If your belief is that feminism is valid because men are like inherently bad, then that's just bad feminism. I mean, how do you even change that? If it's genetics, I mean, if you just think men are like genetically bad, like okay, thank you for your valuable contribution to social discourse. You've you're really adding a lot. It's harmful to the person. It's bad theory, and additionally, it can actually take socially reactionary forms in ways that actually hurt people. With TERFs, it's not just a trans misogyny. It's also a lot of incel related stuff. TERFs tend to exacerbate a lot of the social conditions that lead men to be emotionally isolated, to view women as some distant other thing, and to not want to engage broadly with society. Because if you're a guy and you see like unironic man hating from women, I mean, whether it's systemically reinforced or not, bigotry just sucks to be the receiving end of. Some people on the left, they think that's like a crybaby perspective. Is it really? I just have to wonder what kind of leftist you need to be to believe that like bigotry is the only thing that makes bigotry bad is if it's reinforced by systemic oppression. Like, but before that point, it's totally fine. It seems like a lot of people on the left kind of feel that way with how people on the left will completely invalidate the idea that men can be victims of bigotry or white people can be victims of bigotry. Are they as harmful or pernicious as like anti-black racism or anti-female sex? No, but there's still issues. We don't need to only focus on the worst issue, right? I think a lot of people on the left, not that kind of reverse bigoted, but rather that they're not willing to point it out when they see it. And what's more, if you do point it out, they think that you're sort of kowtowing to the right. Like, to point out that there are black people who hate white people, that's reinforcing a white supremacist narrative. While in my mind, it's kind of the opposite. You're reinforcing it by not saying it's bad. The white supremacist narrative isn't just there are black people who hate white people. It's that the left refuses to acknowledge it because they secretly approve of that hate. That's the real narrative. The knowledge that there are bigoted people no matter what your race is, that's universal. But the idea that the left as a political group is willing to turn a blind eye towards certain kinds of bigotry, that's the accusation from the right. And that's something that people play into when, for example, they reflexively defend a person advocating in favor of ethnostates because the person making that argument is a black woman and the person contesting that argument is a white man. That's so weird and so dangerous and such a betrayal of our principles based on nothing more than an aesthetic adherence to what is generally, considered to be like the fighting line for progressive issues, which is when black women are arguing with white men, it's usually the black women who are being progressive. But as anyone who's watched a Candace Owens video knows, that is just not the case all the time. General trends can't be used to understand or investigate interpersonal issues in the same way that you can acknowledge, say, for example, disproportionate crime rates among racial groups in America, but it would be bigoted of you to take those statistical assumptions and then use it as a way of being biased against an individual. That's not good. That's bad. I thought we knew that was bad. We've been arguing against that for like hundreds of years, haven't we? Even before like modern racial issues were metastasized in the way we currently understand them, anti-racist activists have been arguing against racial essentialization for, at the very least, since the abolitionist days, It's true that a lot of abolitionists back in the 1800s were racist. They didn't think black and white people were equal. They just thought black people shouldn't be slaves. By modern standards, they weren't exactly, like super progressive. But there were people back then, even in like 1842, who believed that the perceived differences between black and white people were skin deep. And these people were considered radicals for their times. I mean, these people were like ostracized sometimes from abolitionist movements because they were giving the abolitionist movement a bad name. I mean, this was the cutting edge. And they ended up being right. But they ended up being right not by being radically anti-white in favor of black liberation, they ended up being right by being radically anti-racial essentialization. That's super cool. Yes, Frederick Douglass obviously did get, more of a, in hindsight, respect. But what about all the white abolitionists in the North who made that argument? I mean, they would have been like totally, totally ostracized in the academic and social communities. I mean, the idea that the racial hierarchy between black and white people was was made up, and that all the differences between black and white people were a product of the fact that they lacked education, like that was a thoroughly radical prospect, but it ended up being right. It ended up being pretty cool. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to get at here. It's not about me being a victim or whatever, because I'm not. I'm always the victor in these interactions, because I'm cool and confident and I'm chill. Not worried about that. I am worried about the left's apparent unwillingness to reflect on these issues with the seriousness they deserve. And yeah, if you're doing that intersectional min-maxing, you're kind of doing like the liberal id poll. You're doing the I'll ask you guys this. What's the difference between we need more female drone pilots and we need more black ethnostates? I don't know. It seems to me like fundamentally they're kind of the same argument, aren't they? They're kind of the same thing. So you take a fundamentally bad structure and then you try to reform it. Nice spittle. I'm enthusiastic today, you know. You try to reform it through inclusivity. How is what PF argued any different than what is essentially being argued for land back? They both want autonomy and right to self-determination. Land back is not about ethnostates. There are not land back activists who are arguing that they should take the whole U.S. and then deport all the white people. Thankfully, because I think that's, a really silly, I think that's a pretty silly argument. If you take a look at what land back activists are saying, they're usually well-measured, reasonable, and very, in my mind at least, ethically defensible. I think that for the most part, the land back movement, because there will always be elements of any social movement I disagree with, but the core of land back, the whole of it, the overwhelming majority of the prescriptions made by it are good. They're good. And we should defend those ideas. And one of the ways we have to defend them is by protecting them from bad advocates. Can you explain the idea between PF's idea and land back? Professor Flowers' argument was that colonized populations have the right to do anything to free themselves from cohabitation with the colonizer population. Now, keep in mind, her definition of colonizer was entirely like white people, meaning that even if as is the case in South Africa, the colonization took place centuries ago, and it's a democratic country now, what she's essentially advocating for is the right for ethnic cleansing. To be very specific, that is what ethnic cleansing means. It is a collective and broad social effort to eliminate or to deport or to disempower significantly an ethnic group. And in this case, it would be that. And ethnic cleansing is bad, so we shouldn't do that. Now she's doing that David Irvin thing where she's denying the thing she explicitly said and is now demanding people to give her proof she supported genocide in ethnostates. I asked her directly like 17 times. She was pretty specific, pretty clear. She doesn't support ethnic cleansing. If colonized populations want to do it, that's their right. So I don't think there's much of a pragmatic difference between supporting a thing and supporting people's right to do a thing. Those are basically the same thing. Which is why you call a person pro-choice if they personally wouldn't want to have an abortion, but they're totally okay with its legalization. You'd call them pro-choice because the social prescription is what matters, not their personal opinion. You could say that Professor Flowers is pro-choice if the choice isn't abortion, but is rather ethnic cleansing. You get to choose, which, again, I don't like. Just not my thing as a leftist. Ethnic cleansing, I don't know, doesn't seem like it works to really serve our values. So, a few last things I want to say to wrap this up, because I feel like I'm being very measured right now. Did you see her most recent video doing her own retrospective? It gets pretty sussy during the 12-minute mark. It is a 45-minute video, so I have not. It says on my debate with Vaush, so I guess it's about me. Maybe one day I'll take a look at it on stream. I talked with her for 3 hours, and I asked her the same question over and over again, and she kept answering in a very consistent and reliable way. She was very specific and clear. I gave her many opportunities to change her mind or to move away from the implicit support for ethnic cleansing, and she never did. So there's not really much ambiguity here that I'm looking to, looking to clean up. Please watch the part where she tries to redefine genocide. If you would provide a specific timestamp to anything especially bad that she says, and I mean something with a few 12-minute mark. Okay, I'm trying to be pointed with this, but fine. We'll take a look for a minute and see if anything in particular is said.
So for anyone who hasn't been following the drama...
Wait, I clicked on the timestamp. Wait, you didn't give me a timestamp. You just said around the 12-minute mark. Sorry, I thought you'd be more considerate than that.
That I'm genocidal, and I just want to clear up what I mean. What I mean to say is that there is no amount of violence that colonized people can enact towards their colonizers that will ever compare to what colonizers have done to them. That compares...
What does that mean? First of all, that's not what she meant, because that's a totally different concept, and she never said that. Guys, my memory is a little bit porous. Did she at any point say there's no amount of violence that colonized people could do to their colonizers that would compensate for what was done to them? Did she ever say that? Is that even, like, relevant? What does that have to do with what we're talking about?
To the millions of kidnapped and enslaved people, to the thousands of years of history and way of life that has been wiped out, to the languages that have been lost, to the...
Also, doesn't this kind of support my argument? This seems very strange to me, because it feels like the implicit suggestion is that the violence that colonized people do is okay, because it could never be enough. You know what I mean? That's right. Isn't that kind of what this sounds like a little bit? I don't know.
The entire caste system that has been created, to the relocation and murder of millions, to the subjugation of entire nations, and to the subjugation and profit of stolen land. And how dare you compare the removal of those who have colonized stolen land and who have subjugated indigenous people.
So for removal of those who have colonized stolen land, what she means is white people in countries that were colonized in the past. Just when we're talking, imagine like a modern, like, white person born in America today. Like, that's the colonizer she's referring to. So by removing a racial group, she is explicitly, again, this is you guys know this is the definition of ethnic cleansing, right? Did I even at any point ever say that the violence that colonized populations could do whatever rival, like, what does that even have to do? Yeah. Ethnic cleansing is the systemic forced removal of ethnic, racial, and religious groups from a given area. Yeah, so she's...
People, as to being the same as the Holocaust. Colonized people have every right to say, you have slaughtered and subjugated us for hundreds of years, and you can no longer stay on stolen land. And it's...
Okay, wait, why are people saying that I misrepresent? She's explicitly doubling down with every sentence. She's like, yes, we are in favor of ethnic cleansing because there's nothing we could ever do that would be worse than what you did to us. And by the you and us, she's obliquely referring to racial groups as white and non-white, which is funny because I'm pretty sure she's an American citizen. If the natives regained power of America and for some reason wanted to deport colonizers, they're not going to stop with white people. You really think they're going to be like, oh yeah, white people are the ones that are at fault for what happened, but all the non-white people who are American citizens who participate in all the systems that contribute to our ongoing exploitation. That's okay.
Kimberly Jones said this for Black people, I'll say it for all colonized people as well. You should consider yourself lucky that colonized people are looking for equality and not revenge.
That's really good, yeah. But we're talking about you here. First of all, this is a villain speech. A little deranged. Second of all, I don't know, I'm just not feeling the leftist vibes. Is she including herself in the colonized? Because I think she wants the revenge, right? My argument is that real land back activists aren't like Professor Flowers. I think she's a bad advocate for these positions, you know? Does anyone have the timestamp for when she implied DrHeemedOut is white?
You have no right to be a part of this conversation. No right.
And then we have the, you can't advocate in favor of decolonization if you're white. Wait, so did she really imply DrHeemedOut isn't white?
That after the debate, Vaush got ripped into by Black people. And it wasn't about leftism. It was about ending racist and colonialist rhetoric. And many Black people from different political ideologies immediately recognized it.
I think that were those the same 4 tweets she showed the first time?
as such and shut it down. If it's primarily black people and not white leftists who understand this rhetoric as racist, then it only
wait.
If it's primarily black people and not white leftists who understand this rhetoric as racist.
Yeah, no, that sounds like, yeah. Not white leftists. Zoom in on DrHeemed. Well, I guess when you're hey, that's first, he's not even a leftist. He's not white and he's not a leftist. That's kind of funny though. Isn't that also like what like racist white people do? That if they think that you're like a race traitor, they'll kind of like they'll like brand you out of the group. That's like that's a pretty common thing. Like, oh, you disagree with me on this? Like, this is one step forward because usually people like Professor Flowers just use the C slur against people like DrHeemed, but this time she's just like, nah, actually he's white. What's the C slur? Ugh, guys, come on.
If it's primarily black people and not white leftists who understand this rhetoric as racist.
Okay, we got it. Please check the email that I just sent you. This was really supposed to be a concise segment. We've got a lot to go over right now. Hold on. Oh, wait, is this really real? Ooh. Hey, everyone. This is Professor Flowers. I'm the person who debated Vaush a few weeks ago. I was surprised to see our debate blow up and even run into clips of it on my own Facebook. My Facebook is pretty private, and I didn't expect those two worlds to collide. So I want to keep it this way. I've made this other account posted here. This is my video where I go over some thoughts of the debates. It's been pretty stressful seeing people critique my debating skill. It wasn't her debating skills that were the issue. It's just kind of the fact that she's a racist ethnic cleansing defender. It's not really it's the ideas that are on trial here. You know, I'm not impugning you for your rhetoric. It's the actual things that you believe. I don't intend to sway people from my beliefs. I also understand it's used to try to argue and convince people what I actually intend to say or mean, but I hope that the people who are somewhat invested in the debate will hear what I have to say. Thank you. And then the thing that she had to say was doubling down on the ethnic cleansing. Well, I admire the consistency. We'll give it a second more.
How fucking dare you sit in your gaming chair and paint the real...
Hold on. This is an office chair, okay? This is an office chair, not a gaming chair. It has no RBG lights. Thank you very much.
...lives of colonized people as a hypothetical towards white genocide. You have no right. No right.
What are these zoom-ins? This is very dramatic.
And that, not because you think I'm genocidal, is the reason I keep on insisting that we need to shut the fuck up and leave the decisions of decolonization to colonized people.
And why are you the one arguing that they should have the right to do ethnic cleansing? You're not shutting up, though. You initiated all of this. You made the videos. You critiqued me and my perspective. You started this with your videos.
And if you think what I'm saying is comparable to the Holocaust, then maybe I'm not the one who needs to learn more about colonialism.
I will say, actually, the really long villain speech where she says that, you know, no violence we do against you will ever come close to what you've done against us. You know, you're lucky we're not looking for revenge. I know that I get, like, memed on a lot for comparing people to, like, Nazis or white supremacists, but does that not sound a little bit like Stormfront rhetoric? I swear to God, I've seen dozens of posts like this of really angry, like, poll posters who are like, listen up, non-white people. You're lucky we're so nice to you after everything you've done to our homeland. Like that, like I hear that pretty often. It's really, 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 really weird. Now, the counter argument to that is that in that case, the white supremacists or the Nazis are the aggressors, whereas the indigenous or colonized people were aggressed upon and then responding. And people will say that the argument is different because, you know, those are two different circumstances. But in actuality, whether or not you're aggressed upon first matters really depends on two factors, time and pragmatism. If it just happened, then attacking back is a retaliation. But if it happened hundreds of years ago, it's revenge. If it's practical, then you can make an argument for it. But if it's not, if it's driven by, say, fanatical hatred, then I think that the logic is really fundamentally comparable. If spite is what's driving you towards that behavior, then I think that you're being motivated by the same lizard brain impulses, whatever drives Professor Flowers to be so racially essentialist. And yeah, every group says that they're victims that are responding, you know. Every group that does genocide says we were the victim of X, so this is why we have to do this. Literally, look through history. I don't think there's been a single genocide that people didn't say beforehand was justified because of what was done to them first. Even the slaughter of gay people, like the Nazis said that they had to lock up, imprison, and you know, slaughter gay people because their existence weakened the Volk, that it was a harm to the fatherland. The way they talked about gay people was actually contextualized specifically with the idea that gay people's existence hurt Germany because they were depriving them of birth rates or whatever the fuck else they wanted to make up, degeneracy, etc. Every group that does mass slaughter justifies it through the lens of victimhood. So the lens of victimhood, real or imagined, is not a justification for ethnic cleansing. Isn't that what happened in Rwanda, like exactly what happened? Yes, there have also been legitimate genocides committed in the name of anti-colonialism. It's actually a thing that has happened before. Though, obviously, I don't think there's anything to fear from anti-colonialists. I don't think there's anything to fear from decolonization. I think there's something to fear from Professor Flowers, and I think there's something to fear from a left who can't recognize that Professor Flowers is a really bad advocate for these issues. Can you clear this part up? What is this? The end of an arc. This is a hemed out video? What is this? He's looking at McNugget. No, okay. It's a meme. Very much a meme. Yeah. There's always it's about the underlying logic. So, with that all said, was there anything else I wanted to wrap up with? Oh, Haiti. So the common counter argument that I saw, which is funny because it's not actually a counter argument. I think the Haitian Revolution was a good thing. But the common counter argument that I saw from people talking about my position on this, that the colonized population shouldn't have the right to engage in ethnic cleansing or genocide or whatever, was the Haitian Revolution. Because the Haitian Revolution had a few gamer moments, a few times, you know, yeah, a few gamer moments. Remember what I said earlier about violence being the legitimacy of violence in this case, in terms of decolonization, being determined by two things: time and pragmatism. Remember that? I said that recently, so you should remember that, okay? So, first of all, what happened in the Haitian Revolution was really complicated, and for me to give a full historical recount would not only take a lot of time, it would actually take more time than you think, because I would also have to read more on it. It's a very significant historical event. But essentially, there were slaves in Haiti, and then they decided they didn't want to be slaves, and then a lot of people died, and then they were a free nation. I'm glossing over a few things. Now, a slave revolt leading to the first free, like, slave nation, like, that's really monumental. I mean, that's momentous. It's amazing. The path towards that end point was a bit bumpy, as I think any major revolution or social upheaval will be. So, first of all, some of the key differences with the Haitian Revolution was that, for one, they were literally slaves at the time. In America today, Native American people are not slaves, to my knowledge. In South Africa today, the black population are not only are they not slaves, they're the overwhelming majority of the population, I think. I think they're like 90%, aren't they? They have a democratic government. So when you are slaves, when you are a part of a slave population, there's not really that much nonviolent. There's not much in the way of nonviolence you can do to seize control of, like, the territory you're being oppressed under. Also, the people you're killing are slavers. The society you're rising up against isn't a biased system. America is a biased system, you know. What they were rising up against was a slave state. There's a bit of a categorical difference, and as I understand it, slaves have basically no means for recourse apart from waiting it out, killing their masters. And in those two situations, not going to be mad if they choose the latter. So that's one. And the second is pragmatism. Again, with slaves, there's really not much that you can do outside of violence to secure any kind of political power. You are literally slaves. There are things that were done in the Haitian Revolution that I think were bad. For instance, and I've talked about this a little bit before, after control of the territory had essentially been secured, there were still white families in Haiti, you know, thousands of white people. And what the sort of revolutionary government did is they actually forced mixed race people to go from house to house and slaughter them, because the revolutionary government did not want the slaughter to be blamed on black people. So they sent the mixed race people as a way of racially insulating themselves against criticism, which I think the logic there is a little silly. But that was thousands of civilians slaughtered just for their race. I think that's indefensible. Were there easier or better ways to have handled that? I don't know. I just think it's a bad thing to do, you know? But the overall historical event was ultimately a good thing, because if they hadn't done all of that, guess what would have happened? They would have kept being slaves, and that leads to a lot more ongoing harm than the short burst of violence that was caused by the revolution. Haiti's never exactly been stable. God really hates Haiti with all the natural disasters and social problems, but in concept, it was just the French, though. That's true. Every Frenchman counts for 9/10 of a real man. They let the Poles live because the Poles sided with them, I think, during the whole thing. But whatever the case may be, I think that you can be somewhat critical of some elements of some generally good historical events. This is nuance that Professor Flower's worldview does not allow for. And I think that it would just behoove the left to be more responsible with this stuff. Because I gotta tell you guys, it probably, as a land back activist, feels pretty shitty to watch a black woman say that she's defending you and then go ahead and argue in favor of ethnic cleansing and say that you're lucky that Native people don't want revenge. I imagine that as a like a Native advocate for land back, that would probably feel a little bit weird. It'd be a little bad. What is this?
Flua, why didn't you bring this up in the debate? Well, that would have been great if I had known that's what we'd be debating. There were so many comments saying that I didn't debate this well, and I find it frustrating because I had debated 2 topics that I wasn't prepared for. It's not that I just didn't know that we'd be debating this. We specifically agreed to talk about something else. In fact, Vaush DM'd me and said, if you were to come on, what specifically would you want to talk about? I'm happy to talk about our disagreements, but I wouldn't want it to be some conversation in a conversation. We're talking about what we talked about before.
I do hate talking with people about if we're gonna talk, I like just talking about the ideas. You know what I mean? Initially she wanted to talk about her video on my video on her video. You know what I mean? I like talking about the ideas. It clears it up a little bit.
We should just choose a topic to discuss, no? Or I said, why would we talk about anything else other than accusations I've made against you and that you've made against me? What would be the point to picking any other topic to discuss? Vaush replied, well, it could turn into a time-wasting maelstrom of constantly citing and looking through video timestamps to make points that could otherwise just be made by stating the positions you believe.
This is 100% true, by the way. If you guys have ever been in the position that I am, or even seen me be in this position, then yes, this is yeah.
And I said, I think you and I have made our positions clear. The clarity of our positions isn't the issue. My issue is...
Well, it kind of was, because she's pro-ethnic cleansing, but she kept saying she wasn't, so that was my thing. I wanted to clear up what her positions were.
Misinformation you've spread, and the fact that you feel empowered to belittle people while doing it. At which point Vaush said, all right, you can come on, signifying that we had an understanding, but also acting as if I was the one asking to come.
Wait, there were more DMs than this, weren't there? Is my memory failing me, or is she actually editing? There was way more than that. Hold on. Did you signify that you had an understanding? No, she blocked me. Wait, I can't see the DMs. Wait, maybe if I scroll down. Hold on. Maybe the search on Twitter doesn't work sometimes. Maybe if I... Wait, here. Please show me. There was a ton of stuff she left out. DMs leaked means DMs leaked. Who cares? There was a whole bunch of preceding shit before we arrived at that point, which I guess I'll try to summarize. But I ask if she wants to come on to clear things up. She said she'll talk to friends to see whether or not she actually wanted to speak with me. I said, how to be fair, people usually come on when I disagree with them. Flowers says, I'm trying to figure out if having a public convo with you is worth being publicly belittled in the way I often see in debates or conversations. I say fair, I can never guarantee a perfectly calm convo, but that's usually what I aim for. I tried that with Mexi too, but life gets in the way, because Professor Flowers cited the Mexi conversation in the first video. Flowers said, I'm willing to talk given these conditions if you are too. So she wanted a big video up on the screen so that she could literally go through the video timestamp by timestamp. I want the screen to be big enough to share the screen so I can show examples of what I'm referring to. She wants timestamp by timestamp to go over. And guys, I'm so sorry. I would rather Roblox myself than go over something like that, because it's so boring and you never get to the actual point and it turns into meaningless fucking semantic forever. As somebody who's had enough conversations to know, trust me, I do not like doing this. I'd like to ask that viewers hold off on donations and that the video won't be monetized so neither of us make a profit from this. Does this sound okay to you? I say that I don't like these conditions. I'd rather discuss the ideas at hand than go over the stream point by point. Why do you want to do it that way? And then I say, I'm not letting my monetization be dictated by the people who I bring on to debate. What do you'd rather just discuss the ideas at hand? I like the idea of going over the stream because it brings up the things that I say that you find inaccurate, and it also does the same for me. It also helps give us context. So there is a point here where sometimes like having a couple of direct things to cite can be good, but in this case, I knew what this was going to turn. I had no interest in talking about the specific content of those videos. Just a few ideas that like I felt she misrepresented. I don't know if there was like a particular like snafu she wanted to catch me in. Like that's fine, but I don't want to frame the whole thing around that. Anyway, I explain why I feel that way, and I say that she can re-upload my audio or video for her own preservation if that's what she would like. Before I agree to talking, I need to address the monetization issue. I understand your channel is how you make money, but I feel very complicated about a white person profiting off this racial issue, while I, a black person, profit nothing. Again, like, this is very fucking weird to me. If you're a black person and you want to talk about this with, like, a white content creator, and you're like, I feel strange about you making money during your job, like, this is very fucking weird to me. I don't know how much of like an entitled, like weirdly fucking like racist asshole you have to be to like actually make, like, why? This might change. I'll make thousands off videos I post, whether you come on or not. It doesn't change anything. I could make a video of me doing a Fortnite dance, post that, put 16 ads in the first minute and a half, and then just be done with it. You're not like interrupting my enterprise, okay? Strange. Yeah, if any, you benefit way more from this than I do because you get clout. I get videos made no matter what. You get attention and clout that you otherwise would not get. You're the one getting access to like a unique and otherwise inaccessible thing. Of course, I would much prefer neither of us gain any money from this conversation, but if you must monetize this video, I'll still talk to you. But I also need to bring up this point and perhaps ask for donations on my end to help organizers who I know who are struggling. I guess that didn't happen. I was willing to do that too, right? If she was like, hey, you know, can I plug my friend's GoFundMe or something? I don't know. And then we talked about times available. Oh, and then I didn't respond for a few days because I forgot to. So there's a 3-day gap here. Wait, no, never mind. Not 3 days. A week and a half. There we go. To which I respond with, your new video misrepresents me even more. What the fuck? Guys, the reason that I didn't respond to this, like, immediately is because I can't deal with this shit, dude. Like, guys, I need you to understand. I get canceled enough as it is. I do not need the additional stress of having a POC, a WOC, in my fucking DMs telling me that we need to reflect on the racial dynamic of who's getting more money from what. Like, it's, like, this gets tiring, and I stop caring. But yeah, anyway, then she made a new video, and maybe we should define terms, and then finally the last bit that we finally arrive at the very end shows up, the last bit that she actually showed. So she missed like the huge chunk where I said that I explicitly did not want to go over like segment by segment in the video, which is why she didn't come with video timestamps. In this video, she's making it sound like I lied to her. Like she was supposed to, like, talk, like we were agreed to talk about video timestamps. And that I, like, tricked her or whatever. But she just arrived to talk about stuff, you know?
And I said, I think you and I have made our positions clear. The clarity of our position, but also acting as if I was the one asking to come on, not him asking me. Based on our agreement, I thought that we had come to an understanding that we'd focus on the accusations made on his stream and my video, which focus on how his content and audience make leftist spaces more hostile to the black leftist who simply disagree with him. And I
didn't we touch on that? I feel like she didn't even have anything to say. She's like, hey, you make it hostile to black leftists who disagree with you. And then I said with a big smile, I make it hostile to all people who disagree with me. There's something, honest to God, my community really does not brigade other people's communities that much.
Talk about some of those accusations, such as how—
Is there a reason you're not being more mean to her right now? Literally, it's honestly just because the left is racially biased. I have nothing else to say. If a person who is white behaved this way, I would tear into them and everyone would agree with me on it. Literally, that is it. If it was a white guy, that like the online left would you know, defend me, nobody would care. It's super frustrating, and it's unironically like really bad behavior from the left that any of this bias seeps in.
Vaush needlessly painted St. Andrew and No Name as segregationist or wanting to start a race war. But this quickly turned into a debate on anti-colonialist violence and black separatist states, both topics which had nothing to do with what we agreed on, and that I also had no
It had to do with the video you made. You talked about black separatism in that video, and I asked you about that in the context of that video.
interest in debating. As I said, I'm not a separatist. I'm not interested in the hours of research I would need to prepare for that, and I simply don't have much to say on the matter, let alone debate it. And while I have some thoughts on colonialism, this is something else that I would need to spend months researching, and also talking with people to better understand. I don't think I would ever want
Wait, is she acknowledging she didn't know or wasn't educated on the... Wait, wait, if her excuse after this was that she wasn't educated enough to have these conversations, then why the fuck am I the one getting lambasted for not getting it? What the fuck? I have done research in this. It's literally part of social... you learn about this pretty early on in social... in sociology. God damn it, dude. Yeah, but you're white. True.
Debate that topic with someone for fear of misrepresenting people. But because these topics were brought up, and Vaush argued a fear of retribution and a misrepresentation of separatism.
Not true. I do not fear retribution from colonized people. I fear people like Professor Flowers. There's a big difference between those things. Because colonized people aren't insane fucking racist ethnic genocide defenders like Professor Flowers is, so. I feel like you stumbled on a side project of hers she never wanted the world to see. Yeah. The saddest thing is that after all this, most of the people in the online left are just going to remember her as like a black woman I bullied. Like they will neither know about or care about the fact that she was in this video and in the debate and all other media where she's talked about it, explicitly defending the right to commit ethnic cleansing as a form of revenge against white people specifically.
I felt like I had to say something, and what I had to say simply didn't matter. By the end of it, many concluded that they are justified in their fear of retribution of colonized people, and that all separatists want a dystopian ethno-state. Which...
Wait, separatists? Yeah, they want an ethno-state. Isn't that literally? Yeah. Wait, can you Google these terms? Black separatism in its purest form asserts what blacks and whites ideally should form two separate independent nations. Yeah, okay. She has no fucking idea what she's talking about. Or, look, it's either she really doesn't know, she is actively and maliciously racist, and she covers it up by deliberately obfuscating this information. The YouTube comments are good, though. I'd been disillusioned with Vaush for a while. I noticed many times when he debated, he tried to compare his opponents with fascists and Nazis. People get so mad at me about this, but, like, I feel like I make a pretty good, like, effort to explain, like, the commonalities every time I do this. They always say this about me because they're in the groups that I would impugn that way. Guys, tankies are not that different to Nazis, okay? Shut the fuck up. I'm sorry. Stay mad, okay? Stalin literally would have allied with the Nazis if he didn't want, what was it, Bulgaria, okay? It was his Bulgaria lust that kept him from being a permanent member of the fucking Axis, okay? They only broke apart when Hitler invaded, okay? You're not special, okay? Fuck you. Lenin betrayed the post-revolution worker commune movement, okay? All of you suck. Fuck you. Eat my dick. The disabled trans woman somewhere in Bangladesh thing infuriates me to no end on so many levels. This person sure is racist against disabled trans people somewhere in Bangladesh. As a white leftist dude who knows more than enough about Vaush content to know his style, I'm so sorry to go through this. As one of the good whites, I am so sorry. Jesus fuck. God damn, dude. Ah, the left. Oh, the left. I love it. To be fair, Stalin and Hitler both planned on betraying each other. Yeah, not because Stalin did not want to betray Hitler so that he could build a worker state. We need to fight back against Adolf Hitler so that we can finally secure democratic control of the means of production for the proletariat. Yeah, okay. All right, we're done.